Welcome to A.U.M. We are live, and I'm your host, Callie Fedosinko of Callie Collective, a digital marketing agency designed to build relationships between financial advisors and their target audience through data-driven custom content and advertising. Do you have a podcast following that you're proud of? Or maybe you'd like to grow your existing podcast following? Perhaps you've dreamed of hosting a podcast as your full-time job while your team meets with your clients. Well, I've got some good news for you. Today, we're talking to Joe Saul-Sehy, and yes, I practiced how to say that, from the podcast Stacking Benjamins. Joe went from financial advisor to full-time award-winning podcaster. He's been where you are, and we're going to talk about how he got to where he is now as one of the most listened to podcasts in the personal finance sphere with over 6,000 subscribers on YouTube alone. So make sure to ask your questions in the comments as we go along. We'll see them on our end and answer them as they come in. So welcome, Joe. I'm so excited to have you.
Cal, I'm super excited that you invited me, and I love telling our story. So thank you.
Yes, that's great. So 16 years as a financial advisor at Ameriprise. Do you miss it?
I don't. You know what's funny is that, so not only did I answer that too quickly?
No, you did it. You're good.
I got to tell you, when I was at the end of my first year, I was asked to become one of locally a few advisors that would give seminars and presentations on behalf of other advisors that didn't like to get in front of a room of people.
Oh, interesting.
And luckily, in high school and in college, I had been a disc jockey, like doing weddings and parties and stuff. And so I remember saying, I don't know much about financial planning yet, but as long as I don't have to do the hokey pokey or lead some crazy dance, then I'm the chicken dance or whatever, then I'm good. And so it was in some ways a great way to learn financial planning very quickly. I was given a script. I was told exactly what the important things were to say. But I fell in love with that part. I really like speaking to groups much more than I like being individually one-on-one with people. I found that by the end of my career, I was getting ulcers from, I worried so much about people's portfolio. And as you know, and every advisor watching this knows, you can do everything right on behalf of your client. You can do all the right stuff. But when markets are deteriorating, like in 2001, 2002, and again in 2007, 2008, you're watching people's dreams go away. And that might be where all my hair went.
In exchange.
That's right. Yeah. I don't know if it was fair, but it was an exchange. Yeah.
So going from advisor to podcaster, did you just jump in as full-time podcast host, or did you start it as a side project and then it just became this thing?
Well, it was actually funny. It was actually several steps. And so I was sitting at my desk one day, and this guy who was in management, of course, at Ameriprise, we all owned our own businesses. So I owned my own franchise, really, financial planning franchise. And so I get this email from this guy named Chris, who was in management and was giving like 2 weeks notice. And Callie, at this firm, like a lot of firms, that's not the type of place where you give 2 weeks notice. It's kind of like you leave, and then almost like Jerry Maguire, if you saw that old movie where everybody's on the phone at 2 a.m. trying to call the clients and grab them.
Yes.
And he said this great thing. He said, I don't know. I know that this is not what I love. I know that I love it about 80%, 85%, but it's not the only thing for me. I think I might have other mountains to climb, and I spend so much time doing this that I don't know what else I don't know how to find the time without stopping to do this to go figure it out. And he talked about how he'd done a good job of saving. So he actually left. And when I thought that he was talking metaphorically about mountains to climb, he actually went, Kelly, and climbed Mount Everest twice. He climbed most of the high peaks around the world. He runs an adventure travel company today. And I saw this guy doing what he loved, and I was turning 40 then. And I was like, you know what? I'm the same way. I don't know what I love. I think I love teaching. And now that I've made some good money, I will sell my business and I will go become a high school teacher. So it was a much longer process than that. I went to school to become a high school teacher. I got about a year into my classes and I
Yeah.
realized that I was learning that I was going to fight administration. I mean, God bless
Mm.
teachers.
Mhm.
I was going to fight administration. I wasn't going to be able to teach the way that I wanted to. At the same time, though,
Yeah.
because by then I had gotten nationally able to do a bunch of PR stuff on behalf of American Express and then
Mhm.
Ameriprise, and we were spun off. I had these friends across the country asking me to write their newsletters, to help them with their scripts when they
Mm.
were on TV, and do all this fun PR kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I was digging it. I was
Yeah.
teaching people about money without having to fight any administrators. And
Right.
so that became a blog. The blog did okay. The blog
Yeah.
did all right. We got some readers, but it was really when we went to the podcast that
Mm.
that things picked up. And that didn't even happen right away.
Yeah.
When we first started the podcast, it was just two of us, a guy who's a current CFP and me, former financial planner.
Mhm.
And we thought nobody was going to listen. We garnered a nice, decent size audience. You know, we had maybe about 2,000 subscribers that you
Mm.
could kind of tell from people every
Mhm.
episode coming back and listening. Um, but we realized that it just wasn't reaching the way that it could. And so
Right.
we blew it up and we made it more comedy. We made it
Okay.
lighter. We
Okay.
gave it segments, and then we lost a third
Yeah.
of our audience. Because immediately people were like, and I remember getting this email from somebody going, "You destroyed our favorite show. Like, we love this show and you destroyed
Mhm.
it."
Yeah.
But I truly believe that we could reach more people if
Right.
we lightened it up and made it more accessible, which is
Mm.
really what we went to do. We gave it a Tonight
Mhm.
Show vibe. And
Mhm.
then I would say 3 months later, after
Mhm.
going like this, we
Mm.
had this hockey stick. And then we were in the press all the time. It was so
Mm.
gratifying and so weird. But Kiplinger called us the #1 financial podcast in
Yeah.
America, and Art of Manliness, a bunch of other big sites, Forbes, put us on these lists, and it went from little audience to much bigger audience
And
in a
just the
6 month
2 of
period.
you.
Yeah,
And how long ago did you start the podcast?
yeah.
Was the blog the same name, Stacking Benjamins?
No, it's funny. We actually started off, and that's part of the thing is that
Yeah.
you know, if you start a blog or if you start a
Mhm.
property, don't think that you've got to stay with it if it isn't working. You know,
Yeah.
our website was called The Free Financial Advisor,
Mm.
which had great SEO value. And we
Mhm.
love it because we're guys that believe that great financial planning is not free. So for two
Mm.
guys that believe free is bad, to teach you that free is bad while we own that SEO was really why I think a lot of people liked our blog.
Yeah.
But we decided to create a show called Two Guys and Your Money, which ended
Mm.
up sounding like Two Men in a Truck, you know, the movie
Mhm.
company.
Right.
It was kind of generic. It was it didn't say enough. And then we actually did the whiteboard approach. We went when we
Mm.
realized that wasn't quite it. It needed to be more fun. It needed to be
Mhm.
more relaxed. We needed a name that was more fun and relaxed. And we put like name after name after name, and we just kept
Yeah.
spitballing, and no name was too stupid until all of a sudden Stacking Benjamins appeared, and went and saw that the
Mm.
URL for somehow was still available, and we grabbed it.
Yeah. And what year was the podcast started?
2012.
Okay. So
Yeah.
that's 12
Eight,
years.
forever ago. Yeah.
Forever ago. That's right.
Right.
So what I heard and what you just said is that branding was insanely important in your journey, because you started out with one brand and then pivoted, and then that's when your growth just kind of like took off.
Absolutely. I think branding that is congruent with listening to your customer, which I know you're all about.
Mm-hmm.
Listening to your customer, what they really want. Our customer, the feedback, you know, it's funny. We got some negative feedback about the show.
Yeah.
And when we got that negative feedback, you can go one of two ways. You can either go, you know what, that doesn't affect me, or screw them or whatever. But if you take the stank off of the feedback and take it to heart, what I realized was we were confusing people. We were too in the weeds sometimes for the people that we were attracting to the show.
Right.
And when we heard that, then we decided, you know what, if we make this lighter and add in more comedy and we like cracking jokes, that would be great. And initially, part of the reason we lost so many listeners was the show really embraced comedy, but we've been doing financial planning for a long time. We didn't know
Right.
crap about comedy.
Right.
And so we had to begin taking the comedy seriously, and like,
Yeah.
how does a comedian really work? Like, how did the jokes fall? How do you, so we had to go back to the drawing board and learn comedy
Mm-hmm.
to lighten it up, which was a whole different thing.
And so how did you learn comedy? Did you take some classes? You just test on each other?
Yeah, we've actually taken classes,
Yeah.
but also some online, wherever we could find it online.
Mm-hmm.
Masterclass was a great place for
Okay.
online courses that we could all kind of do together as a group. We
Mhm.
did a second city thing in Chicago that was remote. We could do it via Zoom because I live on the Texas-Arkansas border.
Mm.
We've done, what haven't we done? There was a cool, I remember one of the first things we did, there was a documentary called Frank and Ollie, which is on Disney Plus, and it
Okay.
was about how these Disney animators brought comedy to Mickey Mouse and how they made Mickey Mouse more of a comedian. And I realized then this was an important lesson, was that good
Yeah.
comedy involves something called pathos.
Mm.
So we have the shows live from my mom's half finished basement again.
That was going to be one of my questions. Is it really in your mom's basement?
And the answer always is yes, with the pause.
Yeah.
Yes. But I wanted a sense of place. I wanted to lower the temperature because if you
Mm.
get a couple dudes who are industry insiders
Mhm.
and who know what the hell they're talking about and been doing it for a long time, and I'd done so much media across the country on behalf of a big name firm, what I realized very quickly is nobody wants to listen to that show. Nobody wants to hear those. They want to hear stories about how people screwed stuff up.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
want to hear that they're going to be okay from somebody who's messed up. So when Josh, and we call him OG on the
Mhm.
show, which is short for the other guy,
Mhm.
of course, duh. So when Josh and I began telling stories about how we screwed stuff up on
Right.
purpose, we found those
Mm.
resonated far more than no. We know everything about everything, and
Right.
here's what we're talking about. But so this idea of pathos that we learned from Frank and Ollie was the idea that comedy is funnier when it's 99% the truth.
Mm.
And when it takes this little spin where I feel sorry for you, I feel
Mhm.
sorry for me, I feel sorry for everybody in the situation.
Yeah.
And it's so awkward that it's funny as hell because you're like, oh God, I don't want to be here. Like, I
Yeah.
totally don't want this. And they showed a Charlie Chaplin thing where Charlie is trying to help this blind woman who is
Mhm.
trying to feed some flowers, and she's missing the pot, right? Because she's
Mm.
blind.
Mhm.
So of course he tries to help her and she dumps it all over him.
Mhm.
And so you feel bad for her.
Yep.
You feel bad for him, and it's funny as hell. But the
Right.
slapstick stuff that was over the top stupid that we did at first, it was so
Mhm.
dumb. Didn't resonate as much as stuff that was 90% the truth.
Gotcha. So you just said a minute ago that you messed things up on purpose?
No, we talked about messing things up on purpose. Oh
Okay.
God, if I
Oh,
said
I
we
get what
mess
you're
things up
saying.
on purpose, then no. Yeah, I go out and I run up a bunch of credit card debt so we can talk about it.
Yeah.
I
That's
take
what
out
I thought
loans
you were
that I
saying. I was
don't
like,
need.
this is insane.
That would be. I probably did say that, but that was far from what I meant.
Sure. So tell me a little bit about those early days. So it's just the two of you. Uh, you had some experience in the media. Did you have any experience with a podcast? And did you
No.
do any research on that? Or did you just kind of blindly go in?
Oh, that is a great question because I did what I think a lot of the people watching us do. I
Yeah.
let fear get in my way.
Mm.
And the two of us sat there. We're like, you know what? We had done some radio together back
Mhm.
when we were both with Ameriprise, and we had great chemistry. But I got to tell you, we stopped because the equipment that it was going to
Mm.
involve, and just the general idea. Now, by the way, this is the dumbest thing ever
Mhm.
to me, which is how does it get from you and I talking
Yeah.
up into the cloud and go to the end user? Which I find that,
Yeah.
we're using a thing that you guys use that I love called Restream.
Right.
For us, we were using a product called Libsyn on the
Mm.
podcast. I didn't know these places existed, but instead of researching it, I just went, that sounds hard. And if it
Yeah.
sounds hard, then I avoided it. If I could have had that year back, and I know people
Mm.
like, you guys have been around forever. Well, maybe,
Mhm.
but if I would have started a year earlier, things would have still been so much better because we would have
Right.
fallen quicker. We would have made mistakes quicker. We would have gotten all that stuff out of the way
Mm.
and realized where our North Star was quicker.
Yeah. So what kind of equipment were you using in the beginning in your mom's basement?
I love this. So I bought this microphone that I still hear today, 12 years later. Everybody says, hey, if you're new, go buy this microphone.
Mhm.
This is the crappiest microphone for a new person to buy. By the way, I don't believe it's a bad microphone. I just don't think it's great for beginners. You'll
Yeah.
find it at Best Buy. You'll see it all over. It's called a Yeti.
Yep. I hear Yeti all the time.
Oh, and the Yeti's a horrible mic. The reason, well, and once again, it can be a fine mic.
Right.
It's what's called a condenser microphone, which means it's going to pick up everything in the room.
Mm.
If you have any wood floors or any echo at all, it's going to echo. There also are like 8, I'm going to say 8, but I think there's only like 4. There's like 4 settings on the back, including a gain button. Most people don't even know what the hell gain is.
Yeah.
So you gotta set all these different settings and be in a really good room for the Yeti to make you sound good.
Mm-hmm.
I used a Yeti. This is the other funny thing about the Yeti. And this is proof that if I can do this, anybody can do this. So this microphone, this Heil I'm using right now, you talk into this side and I breathe across it so I don't get pops, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I was using a Yeti speaking like this. When it turns out the Yeti, you speak into the side of it. So you talk into it like
right.
so I do these first like 10 episodes. I can't figure out why the hell my mic won't turn up.
Right.
Like, I'm like, what the heck is going on? And because I didn't know how to edit any podcast, I was using GarageBand, which is the slowest way to edit anything. And I'm literally cutting where you talk as my guest.
Yeah.
And then I'm taking me and I'm raising me up. And then I cut the next part and then I raise me up. It would take me like 2 hours just to get me on the. I found out later, you can literally take the file now through a lot of different solutions and drag the file and it'll automatically put us on the same level. Like
in GarageBand, or is this a different program?
What's that?
In GarageBand or a different program?
Different program. Yeah.
Gotcha.
There's 2 solutions. One called Aphonic, which as long as you are podcasting, not a ton of hours is free. But over a few hours, you have to pay for it. And then a product that's now defunct called Levelator. I believe Levelator's gone finally now.
Gotcha. So in these early days, how many episodes were you releasing?
We were doing 1 a week.
Wow. You started with 1 a week.
We did. And the reason was I was no longer a financial planner. If I was a financial planner, I might be every other week. I might even start with once a month. Because to your point, I think maintaining that cadence for your audience is so important.
Yeah.
Once you start it, being there when you tell people that you're going to be there is super important. So, but I could afford to do it once a week. There were 2 of us. We were splitting the manpower. And this was what I was doing. So for me, I was able to fully embrace it. I'll tell you this too. We also had no idea then what that first name was, 2 Guys in Your Money. So we had no idea. And we had that website, the free financial advisor. So we called our podcast the worst of the free financial advisor because we knew it was going to suck.
Yeah.
And we knew that it was somebody's telling us that Levelator is still around. Levelator keeps going bye-bye and then it comes back and then it goes bye-bye, then it comes back. Oh, it's Karen. Hey, Karen. Karen's on our team. We, anyway, we, what the heck were you talking about?
That was, how often were you releasing an episode?
Yes. We did this worst of the free financial advisor. And I knew, Callie, it was going to be 13 episodes.
Yeah.
And I thought of it like baseball spring training, where we would figure out the equipment, all the stuff we didn't know, which part of the microphone to talk into, how to level files, and how to get our act together and actually do interviews and put a show together. And that was great. I would recommend that to anybody. Just go create a show that's not the end game. Just get it out there, start experimenting, do all the things, and then tweak later.
That's good advice. How often are you releasing an episode now?
3 days a week. And we have a sister show that's now a real estate show that's once a week. I'm also executive producer of another show that's our brother show called Earn and Invest. So, all in between the 3 shows, we release 5 shows a week.
Okay. Did you ever hire an external production company?
We did. And we still do. We still have an awesome Steve Stewart is his name. We call him the amazing Steve Stewart, which now everybody in the industry calls him that because we put him in our credits at the end. But I wouldn't do that right away.
Yeah.
The reason I wouldn't do that right away is I do think there's enough of art in this,
Mm.
that for you to talk to somebody about what you want them to do,
Mm-hmm.
I really like having, even if it's just for 4 or 5 episodes
Mm-hmm.
where you have done it, creatively what you're looking for. I like there's a guy, Roman Mars, who's
Yeah.
on NPR. He's got a great show called 99% Invisible that I love about
Mm-hmm.
architecture. Roman Mars says before every show goes out, we still do this. Karen and I actually,
Yeah.
we listen to the episode
Yeah.
and we still edit it even more after our production
Mm.
company has, because we know
Oh,
what
that's
we're looking
interesting.
for. And then we actually
Right.
upload it the last, 100 feet. Uploading, it's the easy part after it's
Yeah.
all done.
Yeah.
We upload it, make sure it's where it needs to go. And then we know that our seal of approval's on it because it's our thing. It's our art
Right. It's your
project that we're
baby.
bringing to the world. Yeah.
Yeah. Represents you.
Yeah.
Um,
I want it to be good. So
yeah. So speaking of Karen, I see you have, at least from your website, 14 people on your team, counting yourself. So I think that my viewers are wondering, what are you doing with that many people?
yeah, so what we do is that sounds like a ton of people, but
Yeah.
truly people do a few tasks
Mm-hmm.
for us, and everybody's working on this project full or part time. I think the only
Mm.
person working on it full time is me.
How-
People are
that
people are
brings me to
close
my
to full
follow
time.
up
Yeah.
of how do you pay that many people and yourself all from a podcast?
You don't start there. Don't
Yeah.
start there. I had this great guy from a company called Bigger Pockets, Josh Dorkin, who sat with me. And I
Mhm.
remember Kelly looking at his numbers and
Mhm.
going, we will never get to where you are. And he goes, don't confuse my middle with your beginning. And
Mhm.
I love that. So here's what you do it all yourself at first. And I love
Mhm.
that. And then when something becomes painful, that becomes the first person you hire
Yeah.
when you're able to afford it. And then when something else becomes painful, then hire that out. We realized for us that we want to be more than a podcast.
Mm.
So we have a woman who spends 30, we have 2 people now that she spends 30 and he spends 10 hours a week doing
Mm.
videos for us.
Okay.
So now there's a video component. You don't need video when you first start out,
Mm. Mhm.
because decide if you're going to do video or not
Yeah.
at the beginning.
Yeah.
And
We talked
actually,
with Justin Peters last week,
oh, I
and
saw that. He's
yeah,
so
and
cool, isn't he?
he is. He mentioned video. There's just a lot more you have to take into account when you're starting out.
There's so
Uh,
much more.
yeah, the lighting, the camera, just like you're talking about the microphone. You just got more equipment that you have to figure out.
Now, you could do video like we're doing right here with you, where you do
Mm-hmm.
live video.
Mm-hmm.
Live video is a great way to go. And then your audience implicitly understands, because it's live, that it's
Right.
not going to be edited.
Yeah.
It's going to be what it is. And there's actually an excitement around live video. In fact, we've started doing from time to time. We just recorded one last week. We
Mhm.
record sometimes we'll record live to YouTube and we'll show people how we make the show.
Mm.
And we have a segment of our audience that loves that.
Yeah.
Loves seeing kind of behind the scenes before Steve adds in the music and all the stuff.
Right.
We'll take a break. We'll say stuff that's going to get edited out.
Yeah.
It's super fun to do some live, but you can forego all that and just go, you know what? I'm going to do a live Instagram live once a week,
Mm-hmm.
but make it a show.
Mm-hmm.
My least favorite Instagram lives are when people show up and go, so Callie, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah.
And if I'm an audience member, I'm like, oh crap, you're about to waste my time.
Yeah.
Like, have an
Right.
agenda, make it fun, make it special, and make it something that's going to connect with an audience.
Mm.
And you'll grow one faster, I think, than you think.
Yeah. What would you say was the tipping point for Stacking Benjamins? I mean, I guess the branding was the big one, but was there another tipping point where you're like, wow, this changed the trajectory?
Oh, purely 100%.
Mhm.
Lightening it up,
Mm.
and realizing who our end user was. It wasn't going to be everybody.
Mhm.
We are squarely focused on somebody that doesn't want to be yelled at about their money.
Mhm.
So we're not going to compete with Dave Ramsey. We're not going to compete with Susie Orman.
Yeah.
Good for them, but they
Mhm.
are a guru. You take your thing to Susie and then
Mhm.
you tell her what you're doing and she yells at you because you did it wrong.
Right.
That's never going to be us.
Yeah.
we're going to tell stories about mistakes. We're going to laugh a lot. And so when you still look at our reviews today, the one negative review we get over and over from people, frankly, who aren't in our audience, which is these guys mess around too much. but which is fine because you're not for everybody. But when I see that review now, I think two things. I think I need to mess around better so you don't get lost in us messing around.
Yeah.
And then number two is you might not be my audience. You might be looking for something different than what we want to provide.
Right. At what point did you think we've made it?
Oh, I still wonder from day to day. Like, I don't know that there's such a thing because we're so focused on the mission. We're so focused on the mission. I knew it was going to be sustainable. I'll answer it that way.
Yeah. Okay.
I knew Stacking Benjamins was sustainable when Kiplinger called us best personal finance podcast. When my mom can go down to any magazine rack and pick up the actual, real magazine, and it has us as best of. Its thing is best of. Then I'm like, I think the show's probably got legs and it's going to stay around. But I never think in terms of made it. There's this sad study that shows that nearly 50% of us say we cry about our money. And yet, Justin's a great guy in podcasting. We've got our podcast. There's videos. There's all these people. There's all these financial planners watching what you do, Callie, and learning from you. And there's all these resources. And yet people say, I have nowhere to turn. Yeah. I'm like, really? I think collectively we've got such a big mission that can help so many people that's where my head is.
Yeah. What strategies have you used to grow your audience, and are you using now? You're laughing. You don't have one?
No, I'm actually laughing because Chad here says, been listening for years and I haven't learned a thing, which is actually something we used to say all the time. We used to say, if you learn something from our show, keep it to yourself. That was part of the humor because you ruin our reputation. Which is a whole different, beware what you say, by the way. Yeah. But I missed the question because I was so busy laughing at Chad.
Yeah, no worries. What strategies did you use and are you using now to grow your audience?
Yeah. So now we've realized that as there've been so many changes with podcasting that for us, we have to embrace video. And what I've found is that people have entered the podcast space with a huge video audience, and all of a sudden their audio audience is bigger than ours. So we focused on two platforms, YouTube and Instagram. We published to TikTok, but we actually just tweaked lately after looking at the numbers. Clips from the podcast are actually doing better for us than original content's doing. Now that may be because we have 470 followers on TikTok. So we're at the beginning stage. I think later on it's maybe individual stuff will probably do better, but for us over the short run, I'm keeping as many resources on Instagram where we're seeing some much bigger success. And the way we're having success is thinking about what our competitive advantage is. And much like this show, doing things live, doing things live for us, we're very comfortable being live. So the more we do stuff live, the more we seem to attract people. When we do a live event, we will get quite a few people that follow us after that. So right now the strategy is continue to make a podcast that people want to listen to. I think is the number one marketing strategy of all. Number two is, and I'm only saying that because there's people out there that are going to want to make a podcast. And then you wonder why nobody's listening. Yeah. And I'll go listen to your podcast and it's horrible. Yeah. So work on having a podcast to be proud of and then market it. But then number two is then realize that podcasting could have a few different platforms and maybe release to some of those different platforms. So that is our strategy. I don't know that it's a great one, but it's, but I think for us looking at some other creators, I'm thinking of, and I'm halting because there's a great couple of guys, they call themselves the Money Guys, and they're in Tennessee. They have a big brand. They have maybe 300,000 people follow them on YouTube. Our podcast was way bigger than theirs 5 years ago, way bigger than theirs. I remember having a discussion with Brian Preston, and Brian's like, I'm going to focus on my YouTube channel. And I was like, oh, good for you, man. I'm going to keep making a podcast that I love. And I'm going to keep making that. Yeah. His podcast is now much wider audience than ours. Many more people have heard of him than us because he grew YouTube when that algorithm was really moving.
Yeah.
Unlike now.
Right.
And now that has sent so many people to his audio show that while our show has grown, his show's grown exponentially just by embracing the second channel.
Sure. Yeah.
The
It's
reason
always
I'm
kind of a
reticent to tell
toss up,
people to do that though, the reason I'm reticent to tell people to do that is if I'm trying to run a financial planning business and do all this, like, I think it's far better to do one thing and do it well, you know? Like make a really good podcast that your clients are going to tell their friends about. That becomes a calling card for you. Make sure that you've got good branding. I can tell you one thing we're working on branding now that I'm about to have a meeting about in the next couple hours.
Oh,
which is our cover art. Our cover art is meant to look like one of these like 1950s variety shows.
Sure. Yeah.
I think it has us in like a jacket and like a collared shirt. We're going to change it up so it's the two of us laughing and being much more relaxed. We're going to relax that cover art more. I feel like when I look at our cover art versus everybody else's cover art, I feel like the branding needs to be, I feel like our branding looked really good 3 years ago.
Yeah.
But it's moving all the time.
Yeah, it is. I mean, branding is something that's very personal, I think, to the person. You know, it represents you and where you are.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's still a place for an advisor making a podcast on the side?
I think advisors should make a podcast.
Okay.
I think the first thing that a podcast does is it gives your current clients confidence that you are willing to talk about what you tell them in meetings to a larger audience. And when they hear that, it's almost like an insurance policy for you that the client's probably going to stay around. They hear the podcast. So I didn't even think of it as much marketing at first. And I can tell you why I think this.
Yeah.
So I was on television in Detroit, Channel 7, the big ABC affiliate, and I was on twice a week. And I would have thought being on in front of almost 1 million people 2 times a week on the morning news, my phone would have rang off the hook.
Right.
It didn't.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what did happen, Callie. My referrals went through the roof. My current clients told people, I'm sure they were at some cookout somewhere.
Right.
And they're going, oh, you're having money problems. You should talk to my guy. And everybody's got a guy or a woman, you know, they've got a person in their corner. They're like, oh, I've already got a person. And my person would play the trump card. Mine's the Channel 7 guy.
Yes. Yeah.
And then once they heard I was the Channel 7 guy, then they were more likely to come. Now, I don't think you need to be on big TV. I don't think big TV now is what it was when I was there 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Yeah. I think it's, you know, TV's been going like this, but having a podcast, somebody can sample you, they can listen to you, they can figure out how much they like you. So I don't know that I pay as much attention to having a big name podcast like Stacking Benjamins as much as I pay attention to this is a good way for my clients to really see how passionate I am about what I'm preaching to them.
Right. So on that aspect, what do you think about having guests? Are you for having guests on your channel if you're an advisor? And let's say your goal is building relationships, because I'm a firm believer, like that's what content can do, is build the relationship and the trust you have with your audience. If that's what I'm going for, should I have a guest on my show, or does that take away from me looking like an expert to my audience?
Well, I think sometimes your clients hire you because of the people that you know. And so being able to show people that I know these people that can help their situation. Like when I was the advisor, I was just the quarterback, but I introduced them to an estate planning attorney. I introduced them to tax people. I introduced them to sometimes real estate agents, mortgage brokers. Like I introduced them to all these other people. So sharing those people. Now, what I don't like when you have a guest, and I think a lot of people fall into this trap, is where you're doing Saturday morning radio that clearly is purchased time and you're just hawking product for the next week. Yeah. I don't think I think advisors fall into traps when they don't give stuff away. When you give away your knowledge, people, well, let me start that sentence differently.
Yeah.
If you hold your cards back and you say, I'm not going to show anybody anything until you pay me, and I'm just going to tell you you're messing up until you try to hire me,
Right.
nobody's going to hire you.
Right. There's no trust.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if I'm the person giving a lot of solutions and I'm having other people on and we're giving away solutions to problems and showing people how to solve stuff for free, you know,
Mhm.
the first thing I think, if Callie's giving it away for free on this show,
Right.
then she has a lot more that she can give me if I pay her.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I
Yeah.
think. The second thing that I think is that she's the kind of person that I want to work with because she's very open. Like
Mhm.
everybody wants to work with these people that are very open. So I would say this, have guests on, but don't fall in the selling trap.
Mhm.
I wouldn't sell on my show. And then the second thing is that I would also always remember that people come for the guest, but they're there for you,
Mm.
right? Joe
Yeah.
Saul-Sehy is on the show today, but
Right.
Justin was here last time. Somebody else is going to be here next time.
Right.
They come for Callie,
Yeah.
right? So if people,
Well, we hope so.
so so that's why on our show, the show's an hour long, just over an hour long, and the guest segment's 25 minutes.
Mhm.
We have these different segments so that we can have a guest and flex that, but we also have other, and it doesn't have to be as complicated as my show is because I get to
Sure.
do it
Yeah.
full time.
Yeah.
But if you, as an example, have at the top of your show, maybe like a headline that you're going to share that just came up in the news,
Mhm.
and you're just going to monologue about it for a couple minutes, letting people know ahead of time that I've got this great guest who's coming up in just a second. But before that, I'm really worried about the fact that, you know, what a headline we just did is that Discover and Capital One just merged.
Oh.
And what does that mean? That if you
Yeah.
hold on to credit cards, what's
Right.
going on there? Like,
Right.
and then we start talking about reward points and all this
Mm.
stuff. So we end up having a great conversation around that. Then we have a featured guest for a while, but then afterwards we have maybe some community time where it's me and I'm chatting with my community
Mhm.
about all the cool things that are happening in my practice or what's going on with,
Mhm.
you know, different things in the town that I serve or the community that I serve.
Right.
So I don't like forgetting those segments because people really want more you.
Yeah. Yeah. Last question for you. What advice would you give to an advisor thinking about starting a podcast?
What advice? A podcast,
Mhm.
a podcast is like a mullet. How about that? Which if people don't know the mullet haircut, go look it up. But a mullet is described as business in the front and party in the back. It's very short. If I had hair, so very neat up here and then maybe a little long in the back. So I think a good podcast is inviting to new people to whatever you do. And the reason I say that is because new people don't know you. They have no relationship with you. They just want whatever it says on the title.
Yeah.
So get to the title, get to the meat. Don't talk about your seminar coming up. Don't talk about your practice. Don't talk about, give them the stuff that they're looking for.
Yeah.
And then at the end, the only people left at the end are people that want more of you. And even though, and I'll get pushback from new people sometimes on this, Kelly, because they're like, they'll go look at the stats on their show and, you know, your stats start up here and people, no matter what, it goes down to this. And they're like, I'd rather sell to this number of people than this number of people though love you. The people that are there at the end of the show love you, and your conversion rate is going to be way exponentially higher than if you make people angry up here because you're going to start selling them stuff at the beginning of the show. At the end of the show, you've already proven your worth to your audience. So sell to them.
That is such a great point because YouTube videos are the same. I mean, it's like 50% of the people or more drop off halfway through your video. But that's a great point. The ones who are staying on longer are the ones who are actually interested in what you're saying.
And that's an opportunity to then, if you talk about your community at the end, and they go, wow, there's more. Like I can get more of you. How do I get more of you? That's fantastic. So describing those next steps at the end, celebrating the people around you shows what a great community member you are. I mean, I love them. I don't remember who told me the mullet analogy, but man, I've loved that ever since I heard it. I'm like, that is that's a good template. And like anything, Kelly, you'll break it from time to time, right?
Yep.
If
Absolutely.
we have a huge event coming up that people want to know about, I'll talk about it at the beginning.
Yeah.
But generally, if you listen to Stacking Benjamins, nobody even knows that OG is an advisor until 9/10 of the way through the show. He has one ad and it's about a minute long, and that's it. That's the only chance they get to hire him is 1 minute, and he gets plenty of leads from just this one little ad after we've already shown value.
Right. That's such great advice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. And I love the mullet analogy.
Feel free to use it and don't quote me. That's fine.
That was great. Thank you so much for your time today. And thank you to our audience who joined us. And join us next Monday to learn how you can connect on a deeper level with your clients and prospects by adapting your communication style to your client's preferred communication style using DISC, which my team and I have just gone through this. Spoiler alert, I'm an S. Patty and Michelle of Productivity Uncorked will be guiding us through how to use DISC to elevate your relationships to the next level. Make sure you also sign up for our newsletters. Here's our community shout out right here if you want more. So you never miss an episode. We'll see you next time. Thanks.